Leanna. Today I am joined by Nima and Gilland, and we'll be talking about the new abortion ban which passed in Oklahoma. So Nima, why don't you go ahead and start by telling us a little bit of the history, and then we can talk about this madness in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, really unprecedented. A complete and total abortion ban passed by the Oklahoma State House just yesterday, I believe. And there are no exceptions for rape or incest. Conception really begins at birth. So this isn't a 10-week ban.
At conception.
I'm sorry, birth begins at conception,
conception.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Birth begins at conception. And so this isn't a 10-week ban or even a 6-week ban. This is a total ban with one exception and one exception only: to protect the life of the mother. And there's pretty significant criminal penalties for physicians in Oklahoma, not for the woman, but doctors who perform abortions or who assist in performing an abortion can be sentenced up to 10 years in Oklahoma State prison and be fined up to $100,000. Now this comes on the back of two laws that were passed in both Mississippi and Texas, which I'm sure we're going to be talking about, that have been litigated all the way to the Supreme Court. We're probably going to get an opinion this summer. But what I'm seeing, and I'm interested to hear what Gillen and Liana think, I'm seeing a complete and total erosion of Roe v. Wade, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, and really women's rights that have been the established law for almost 50 years now.
So I've actually been reading that the Supreme Court is actually expected, I don't know how people know this, but it's expected to overturn this decision. So I think that would be just, I don't know if there's a word for that, monumental if that happens. I mean, we're slowly seeing that in different states. I mean, we sat here last year and talked about Texas, and we're talking about 6 weeks versus 8. Now we're talking about a complete ban. I mean, I can't even process that. So I want to hear your thoughts.
I think we feel similarly about this issue. It's horrific. It's a horrible pattern. State governments realize that they have a conservative majority in the Supreme Court, and so they started enacting this legislation because they are fairly confident that they are going to get the support of the majority of the Supreme Court. I mean, it's truly devastating. I mean, it makes me want to cry talking about it, thinking about it. It's horrific.
I mean, it's horrific to think about, all. So let me backtrack for a second. So Oklahoma, right? It's borders Texas. A lot of Texans have been traveling to Oklahoma over the course of the past, 9 months since this law had passed in Texas, to get these abortions. Now there's a complete ban. So we're talking about women in 2 states trying to figure out where they can travel to, assuming they even have the means to travel, to get something that should be just a fundamental right, period.
Yeah, so we're talking about 3 laws, and I really want to talk about the Supreme Court as well. The Mississippi law, which has been litigated, a 6-week abortion ban. The Texas law, which is fascinating, and let's just make sure we talk about it. It's not an abortion ban per se as a private right of action for private citizens like me. So I can sue anyone who performs an abortion or who helps someone perform an abortion. And that can be, and that's a very broad help. So if I'm driving someone to and from an abortion clinic, that's considered helping someone with an abortion. So there's civil penalties, and that's really an end run around the constitutional protection for women there in Texas. It'll be interesting to see if liberal states like California do the same thing with respect to gun rights. But I really want to talk about the Supreme Court, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on the 3 laws, but also the justices in the Supreme Court. Because look, you don't know what's going to happen. Obamacare, everyone thought it was going to be struck down. Chief Justice Roberts saved it. I think it's fair to say that for abortion rights to remain the law, the liberals, let's say, they're going to need one more vote. I think the 3 liberal justices obviously are going to rule to strike this law down, whether it's Breyer, who's still on the bench, Sotomayor, and Kagan. You got those 3 votes. I think Chief Justice Roberts will also join them. I think it's clear that he believes Roe v. Wade, Casey, the established law of the land. So the liberals need one more vote? Can they get one more? I don't think they're going to get one from Thomas. No way. And we got to talk about his wife as well. She's off the rails. So Clarence Thomas, forget it. I think Alito, no way. Those two are gone. So really, the three newer justices.
Barrett's a no.
You think Barrett's a no?
Barrett's a hard no.
You think because of her religious beliefs?
Yeah. And just
But
her
she might be a
rulings and
surprise.
her. I remember when she was nominated, reading, sort of the shocking contrast in how she valued the life of an inmate versus the life of an unborn child. I don't think she's on the table personally.
So that leaves us with Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. So
She might. I don't know. I agree. I think she has a very strong religious background, and we obviously saw that. But I think she might.
well,
Flip it.
it's tough because for many years, the Supreme Court wouldn't even take on abortion cases. I mean, it was well established that, a woman's right to choose in the first trimester at least, that was the law. So any infringement upon that was struck down. If it go to Court of Appeals, those decisions would never make it to the Supreme Court. So you have these three new justices that have never, at least at the Supreme Court level, dealt with an abortion case. So, is Gorsuch, is Kavanaugh, are they willing to kind of stick their neck out and prevent Roe from being overturned? Because if it is, my prediction is the majority of states will pass abortion bans.
Do you
I
think
think
the
all the red
majority
states will pass.
are the majority of states red?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So that's why the electoral
That's
college.
what you
Yeah.
No, I think every red state will. I mean, why wouldn't they, right? Because they're, they all have such strong conservative and religious views on abortion to begin with. If, the Roe v. Wade gets overturned, why wouldn't
but
they?
Even
do
a
they
purple
is the
state
question.
like
It's
even
also-
a state like Florida, I think they would pass an abortion ban. I mean, they're
100%.
passing all sorts of
Yeah.
other arguably discriminatory laws. I think abortion is going to be one of the first things that my friend DeSantis, my former alum, will pass there.
Oh, really?
They went to Harvard. Yeah, he's not my friend, but
It's shocking. It's traumatizing to think about. It's horrible to think that it could happen. It's horrible to think about having a daughter, bringing a daughter into the world. You have a young daughter, a very young. She's one in a couple months.
like a few months.
Yeah, and
You've got a little girl too. I mean, sorry.
No, yeah. I mean,
Just pointing at
it's just such a different landscape. It also just really reemphasizes how the integrity of the Supreme Court is so, even just the way we're speaking about it right now, it's so clearly not what it was established to be, meant to be. It's not the, apolitical body that it is supposed to be. And I think we have to consider that when you're thinking about things like, do you expand the Supreme Court? Because you have to acknowledge what it actually is. I mean, we're sitting here talking about the political views of Supreme Court justices, which you're not supposed to do, because their personal views are not supposed to affect the interpretation of the law. And when you accept and no longer try to say, oh no, the Supreme Court is doing its job, it's doing what it's supposed to do, when you kind of acknowledge that no, it isn't, then it makes it a lot more logical why you would expand it. Because if it's a political body of 9 people who are making decisions based on politics, then in their political views, then it makes more sense to have it be a larger group of people.
well, I think we got to go into the political discussion now. So, obviously, Obama nominated, Merrick Garland, our current Attorney General, to be a Supreme Court justice. McConnell blocked that nomination. So if Gorsuch, who ended up being appointed by former President Trump, ends up being that deciding vote, that 5th vote, you realize that really McConnell is going to be single-handedly responsible, his plan for overturning Roe v. Wade. And I know we probably have some questions. Then the question is, okay, are the Democrats going to go nuclear, right? What's going to happen in the midterms? But are they going to go nuclear? I don't think they have the votes in the Senate to overcome a filibuster or anything to that effect to pack the Supreme Court. But it's really one of the only options right now.
Got to get rid of filibuster first.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question for you guys, just in terms of, just for the general public. In your opinion, what do you think the consequence of this is going to be on just the average person, right? Be it female, family, like what do you think is going to happen once this law gets signed, which, you know, the governor is expected to sign 100%.
He's promised to sign it. So, yeah, let's kind of get into a little bit of the details. So, when we say 6-week abortion ban, what does that mean? What is a complete and total abortion ban? So, it's from your last missed period. So, 6 weeks, really, when a woman misses her period, she really only has maybe 1 week, 2 weeks, really a short window of time to get an abortion. So
to think about it, to realize she might want to decide whether you'd like to have one or not. Yeah. Then to make an appointment and go through with the appointment.
And I've said this last time, I'll say it again. I didn't even know 6 weeks in that I really didn't. So what, like, to me, that was what was so baffling about that, is because a lot of women don't even know. You may not have picked up on it. You may not even, oh, okay, I missed my period. You know, you don't always just think that automatically. And so it's just not.
Yes, functionally, the 6 week and the total are pretty similar because of everything that you just said.
Yeah, it gives a very, very short window, and a lot of conservatives, 6 weeks tends to be pre-heartbeat, so it gives women at least some very, very small window of opportunity to have an abortion in those states. Complete and total doesn't matter, you know. Mm-hmm. Once, you know, insemination happens, there's no opportunity for abortion again, unless it's to save your own life, which is obviously going to be very rare. And that's why you don't see these types of bans here in the country. They've been universally struck down as an infringement on a woman's right to choose. But now we're taking, not only we're not chipping away, we're basically rolling it all the way back. Yeah. So each state's laws will be different. There'll be some states like California, I mean, we're talking about it, but abortion will be legal here. It will always be legal here. Women who can't afford it will be able to come to California and have an abortion, unless obviously laws change. But women who can't afford to travel to blue states, I don't know what's going to happen. They're either going to have the child. There's going to be back alley abortion.
I will tell you what will happen. They will still have an abortion. A lot of them. The legality of having an abortion following Roe v. Wade didn't actually significantly increase the amount of abortions that happen. They were just safer, legal, performed by medical professionals. The reality is, you know, it's going to happen, especially if you're talking about young girls, a 12-year-old, 13-year-old girl living in a red state who cannot tell her parents, but she feels that she cannot, probably validly. And then you're talking about people looking on the internet, looking online, and it's still going to happen. And it's going to cost lives. Where it doesn't happen, it's going to set women back in their ability to pursue their financial and academic goals. It will have a profound effect on everyone. It will also have a profound effect on the people that are born into a situation that can't sustain a child, that can't parent a child, that can't financially afford a child.
So I think in an effort to, you know, protect women's health and all that stuff, I think we're doing the opposite. Because I agree with you, because women are still going to try to get an abortion and do so in back alleys or whatnot. So we're not really protecting women's health, because those procedures are dangerous if they're not done in a clean facility, sanitized facility, by a doctor. You know, and so people are still going to get them, but now we've done the reverse. Now we're not protecting women's health; we are hurting them even more.
Well, I want to talk about three sort of important circumstances as well that, you know, we kind of touched upon. But let's talk about rape. Let's talk about incest. Let's talk about unborn children with severe special needs. There's no exceptions for either of those. Woman's raped, she's impregnated, has to have that child. Incest, father has sex with a young woman. I mean, it's a terrible thing to talk about, but that young woman has to have a child with a significant genetic defect, you know, Down syndrome. And again, I know these are controversial topics. That mother will have to have that child. I mean, these are three, you know, even the most restrictive abortion states and laws have carved out exceptions.
But there's a reason. I'm sorry to cut you off. There's a reason why. Let's talk about the genetic defects, right? These are conversations that you have, I think, with your significant other, right? When you're family planning, and because these are things that happen anyway. There's not something that you can control, right? You talk about, do you want to continue with the pregnancy? These are things you talk to with your physician, that if it happens, what do we do? So can you imagine? There's a reason why these conversations are being had, is because it's a significant burden on a lot of parties involved, both on the child and the parent. So these are conversations that need to be had, that are being had with your, partner, I should say, and your doctors. And now we're just eliminating that entirely in these states, and that's a problem.
Yeah. So what can be done aside from hoping for one or more justices to do the right thing, packing the Supreme Court? I don't think it's a political viability right now, given the current makeup of the Senate. What can people do, really? What sort of option do women in states like Oklahoma, Mississippi, Texas, what, if anything, can they do? In
response to, in immediate response, what they have been doing, which is protesting and marching and being vocal about this, but it's also, you have to vote, run for office, find people, support people, campaign. We have to change the makeup of people that are elected, and also vocalize what your beliefs on this issue are, because a lot of times politicians like Smith, I think, is it Stitt?
Governor?
The governor who's going to sign it. He made these promises about, I'm going to sign anything that's going to limit abortion, because that gets him elected, right? And you keep being vocal about your thoughts and beliefs, organize grassroots campaigns, donate. If you don't live in Oklahoma, you don't live in Texas, donate to causes that help women who are going to be severely impacted by this bill.
So let's talk a little bit about just the general burden, right? It's not just on those two states, right? Because now women are going to be trying to flee. Or not flee, go to other states. Let's say California, right? That burdens, let's say, the state of California, right? Because now we have so many people from Texas trying to come to California and get an abortion, or people from Oklahoma now. I mean, what was it that we were reading earlier?
Arizona, our neighbor has said that, to the extent that Roe v. Wade is overturned, they're going to pass an abortion ban.
But think about how much, after the Texas law passed,
half of the abortions in Oklahoma.
The abortions in Oklahoma went up 800%. Every month they saw 800 plus women coming to Oklahoma to get these abortions. Okay, so think about what that does now. These two states are severely restrictive, right? And so you're saying Arizona. And so what does that do to all of the other states? What are your thoughts? I mean, what is the impact here?
It's a huge impact. I mean, you're talking about a country that's already divided, right? Where the laws vary dramatically from state to state. And it's almost like we're two different countries altogether. When people visit from Europe or South America or anywhere in the world, and I talk to them about the law, they don't understand federalism. I explain it. So they'll say, so one state you can have a death penalty and the other not. One state drugs are illegal, and one state you'll go to prison. And now we're dealing with abortions too. I mean, it's just, for me, certain rights are fundamental, and there shouldn't be any distinction between states. And I know, you have really kind of two schools of thought when it comes to the abortion issue. You obviously have your pro-lifers, right, that believe they're protecting the safety of the child. But you have these really sort of strict federalists that say, listen, this is a state law issue. States should be able to decide this, like they can with family law, right? You got some states that are community property, some states that aren't. Obviously, my belief is that it's a constitutional issue, a women's rights issue. But I really have a problem with laws varying dramatically between states, and that's really what's happening here.
So I want to make a comment on that, but before, I have a question for you, since you're like our chief, correspondent. Was this expected out of Oklahoma? Because for me, it came out of left field. Was this something that was talked?
I believe the Oklahoma State Senate had passed a similar bill, but what happened here, there was really, I think, little to no notice. It was like a voice vote.
In the
Obviously,
dark of night,
yeah. Oklahoma is predominantly Republican, but I mean, usually, obviously, we do a lot of legal commentary, and I get media inquiries, and this really came out of left field. I mean, it just happened, and the complete and total ban, was certainly not expected.
Right.
I read some comments from government officials in Oklahoma. I don't want to say exactly who it was because I can't for sure remember. It might have been Olson, the guy who authored the bill, or I'm not sure, but he was speaking about the lack of incest or rape exception. And he said, we can't punish the child for the faults of the father. And you notice in that statement, he didn't say anything about the woman carrying the child who was raped, who is now being forced to bring her rapist's child into the world. Just a lack of consideration for the person tasked with incubating and then birthing the child.
Here's my problem with that statement, even beyond that. You don't want to punish the child, right? Is that what they said? You don't want to punish the child,
right? Exactly. Yeah. But how do you know? How do you quantify the psychological punishment of understanding that?
But you want to bring that child into the world anyway, because that's not punishment. No, and what about from a biological standpoint, the problems that child is likely going to have, right? It's mind-boggling at how nearsighted these laws are. And another point I wanted to make is, and again, we've talked about this. All of these pro-life people, they are pro-life, and every life at conception is a life. Okay. Our system is so flawed and is so full of children that are just being passed around left and right. Why don't you fix that first? And then we can talk about, banning abortions or whatnot. These people are so worried about children that are not born yet, but the minute they're born, nobody cares. They're just passed around.
Who needs medical care for those kids now that they're born?
So then what happens? Now that they're born, it's like, oh, not my problem. No, fix that system, and then maybe we can revisit this conversation. That's my stance. Always has been, will never change.
And hilariously, specifically, the governor and the guy who wrote the bill and a lot of the advocates of the bill say that their main cause and focus, and this is what they say, is the unborn, which... they say that correctly because they don't care about children or babies.
Yeah.
They care about unborn children, which is absurd. It is.
So I know we're short on time. We got to wrap up. I want to leave with two questions for both of you because I think it's going to happen this year. Do you think Roe v. Wade will be overturned or at least substantially overturned, number one? And do you think the Republicans will face a backlash in the midterm elections as a result?
For me personally, yes on both. I hope that I'm wrong in the first question. I hope that for once we can all unite as a country and just understand the fundamental impact that this will have on everyone, no matter where you stand. So my hope is that it doesn't get overturned, but I think it will. Just reading the room, really everything that we've seen so far, I think it will, and I think there's going to be some significant backlash for sure.
Based on the makeup of the court, I agree that it is looking like Roe and Casey will be just completely overturned. Will there be backlash? Yes. Will it be enough? Will it amount to anything that is that affects the Republicans in the midterms? I don't know, because unfortunately, and Liana and I talked about this issue is not one that just affects women, obviously. It affects women, men, and children. It affects you if your parents are forced to have 8 kids and you're one of 8 when you should have been one of 3 because that's what your family can financially provide
Cost
for.
of living. Hello.
Yeah, exactly. But unfortunately, when it comes to actually showing up and voting and the way people vote, men don't tend to vote on this issue as a deciding issue. And until there is more support from more people who it does affect, I don't know that Republicans will be affected in the midterms.
Yeah, I got to go on record and answer the questions when we wrap up. So I'm hopeful that one of those three justices, or maybe one of the two, who we don't know how they're going to vote, does the right thing for the sake of women, for the sake of the institutional integrity of the court itself, to overturn 50 years of precedent. I'm not optimistic, so I think the likelihood of it getting overturned is high, probably more likely than not that Roe v. Wade is either overturned or gutted completely. With respect to the Republicans, it's been interesting, but historically, abortion has been a terrible issue for Republicans. Almost all Democrats are pro-choice, just generally speaking. And a lot of Republicans, even Trump-type Republicans, are generally pro-choice, a lot of them. So the fact that they're taking such a very strong, aggressive stance on a really divisive issue within the party, I think it may end up splintering certain parts of the Republican Party, but we'll see.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for joining, guys. I think this was a really important topic to discuss. I think we'll be monitoring it very closely. And I hope that this is the last time we have one of these podcasts. 2 states, please, guys, wrap it up. Stop it.
Agree.
But with that said, thanks for tuning in. Thank you, TikTok Live and Instagram Live. And then for everyone else, if you like what you heard and what you see, please subscribe on all of our podcast platforms. And we'll see you next time.